Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Wednesday, August the 14th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am joined, as always, by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are you?
I'm good. Back for another week, 1 week closer to actual real live action, and we're going to get a glimpse of that this week when the Titans host the Seattle Seahawks when they come for joint practices tomorrow and Thursday. So super excited to talk about that and this last game that happened on Saturday and so much more today.
And to preview all of that we have coming up this week, we have brought in friend of the show, special guest, Turron Davenport, a good friend of ours, TD. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you guys having me, man. It's good to talk shop.
We love talking with you, and this is the first show we've done in a while where we've not had a practice that day or the day before to kind of react to what had gone on. And so I was thinking, the folks have heard enough of my thoughts and enough of JT thoughts. Let's get another trusted voice in here, get their opinion, get a third opinion mixed in, and there is plenty to talk about. Obviously, we'll be reacting to preseason week 1. Get your thoughts on what we saw on Saturday night, and then look forward to what we are going to see at practice the next 2 days as the Titans host the Seahawks. Before we dive into all of that, if you're watching with us live today, we appreciate you being here. Do us a couple of favors. First of all, make sure you're watching on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. That's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Find this live stream there, and you can join those already in the comments. Glory Day Sports and DJ and Wyatt. Any questions, comments you might have for TD, now is your chance to throw them in there, and we will get to everything you guys have to say over there in the comments. Make sure you're liking and subscribing while you're there and following the socials at Hot Read Pod. All right, TD, I was talking to you today after we spoke to the assistant coaches this morning, and we're slowly reaching the portion of August where you're itching for the real thing. You know, this is nice. The preseason is cool. I think we're going to get a little taste of that the next 2 days as they host joint practices. Every year when we watch the joint practices, it's like it's a little bit of a preview of the real thing. So that's exciting. But man, I don't know about you. I'm getting to the point where I am scratching my forearm waiting for the real thing to get here.
Yeah, no, I apologize for the background noise. I'm at my daughter's apartment, and a crew decided to get in the pool right when I sat down to do this. But yeah, and I'm definitely with you on that. The questions of Will Levis and his mayo and coffee cologne to an offensive lineman coach is just like, come on, man. Let's roll into more football content, talk shop. So I 100% am looking forward to this week and what we have coming.
So on Saturday night, we saw a very brief portion of the starters on both sides of the ball get out there. I want to start on the offensive side of the ball and get your general takeaways from the 14 or so snaps we saw from those guys. We got Levis out there. We got a number of the starting receivers. We got the entire starting offensive line. What was the number one thing that you walked away from that game thinking based on what we saw?
Yeah, I like the offensive line. Just the fact, there were some pressures, of course. But, I think that 3rd and 10, Calvin Ridley throw and catch and run, I think that was a good example because if you remember 3rd and 10, there used to be a time where you're like, yeah, this probably isn't going to be a good situation, right? You go like this and say, hey, listen, I hope the young fella or old fella, whoever's under center, stays healthy because they're about to get killed, but that wasn't the case. And Levis was able to hang in there, find Ridley, and really caught it. That play, period, was probably the biggest takeaway for me. Just the time to be able to stay in there and connect with Ridley, the wherewithal really to know, okay, here's a window. Let me settle down. And then Levis get him the football, and then he catches it and gets the yards after catch. Remember, he caught it in front of the sticks. He was short of the sticks, but he was able to get those yards. So that play right there is something for Titans fans to be really excited about.
When I go back and think about that game and rewatch some of it, the biggest thing for me is and again, it was such a limited sample size, but the playmaking ability that this roster has feels really refreshing. And you mentioned Ridley, and that one play was kind of demonstrative of that. You had a big Tony. We know from last year is a guy that if you get him in open space, he can be electric. We even saw a Traylon Burks, and he ran over a guy, which is something we've been asking him to do ever since he got into the league. Drop his shoulder and hit somebody. Both of the kick returners had impressive punt return and impressive kick return. There's more than one guy on this team that can make a play. And it felt like a lot of the time last year, it was like you're praying for DeAndre Hopkins to make something happen. And otherwise, you don't have a whole lot of hope that somebody's going to get the ball in their hands and do something impressive.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head. It's more than one guy who has the potential to take it 60. And we didn't even mention Tajay Spears. I know he didn't have a big play, but he brings a lot of big play ability also. And then Chig, when he decides he wants to catch and run, like he could be something too. Just look at that Chiefs game, you know what I mean, where he ran through like 70 tackles, So it is refreshing to see this group and these playmakers that Will Levis will have.
As we get closer to the 53-man cutdown and people are starting to wonder who is and isn't going to make this roster, maybe the number one question I'm getting is how many receivers is this team going to keep and who's guaranteed a spot at this point? And I think it's pretty obvious that we know who the starting three guys are. We know Traylon Burks is going to have a spot on this roster. I think it's pretty fair to assume that Nick Westbrook-Akine is going to have a spot on this roster. That really leaves maybe a spot left. We heard Brian Callahan kind of hint on Sunday that they're going to keep 5 or 6 guys up and active. So I don't think this is going to be a 7 wide receiver roster when they cut down. Do you think it's really going to just come down to who wins the returner role? Is it as simple as that?
In essence, I think so, because they're cross-training everybody, right? And there are going to be times where Ridley's in the slot, but when they have their top 3, and they rotate in, Burks will rotate into the slot, right? You got Westbrook-Akine playing the slot too. Whoever out of that group of, I call them the Smurfs, right? Jaquan Jackson,
right.
Kyle Phillips, and Mason Kinsey, Kearis Jackson, whoever out of that group emerges, they're going to be that quicker, shifty slot guy that's a change of pace. So I do think it's going to come down to who does the best in the return game, because I don't think they're going to need much out of whoever it is as a slot receiver. Their contribution is going to be as a returner. And I tell you what, seeing what we saw, it's going to be pretty exciting whoever gets back there.
So if I ask you today who you're going to which horse you're going to the window to bet on, who do you think it is?
I got to say Jaquan Jackson, I think. And I'm going off of what they would probably perceive to be potential. Mm-hmm. Out of those guys, I think Mason Kinsey's having the best camp, but Mason Kinsey has a good camp every year. Like, this is nothing new. You know what I mean?
Super Bowl, baby. This is his month.
These are the days for him. So I don't know, man. I think it would be Jaquan out of all of them.
I'm pretty confident it's either Jaquan or Kearis. Whichever of the two of them doesn't end up on the roster, I'm going to feel bad for, because I think they're both rosterable players. And I think Kearis has acquitted himself really well. He's a guy that we've kind of gone. I feel like most of the media has gone most of this camp not really talking about him, because he's been running with the threes. And I heard you mention on some show a couple of days ago about how like Kearis looks good, but he's the best guy amongst the threes. And so like, what do you make of that? I'd love to see him get to play with the twos, get to play with the ones. And maybe this week in the preseason game, we'll get to see him play against some better competition, because I think he's a talented player.
Absolutely. And you can't forget Kyle Phillips, man. Like he's special, man, as far as his ability to run laterally as fast as he can. I was telling me, I told Adam Humphries the same thing, man. You guys are like crabs. Like, you run forward as fast as you run sideways, and it's amazing to me.
So going to the defensive side of the ball, I had more questions and takeaways from this game on defense than on offense. I was texting you after the game about how that first drive, the first 2 drives where you had some of the starters in there, kind of funky, kind of the antithesis of what we were expecting, like what we are hearing about how this defense is going to operate this year, what we're seeing in the non-filmable portion of practice out there. Very aggressive, downhill, playing press man. And they get out there on Saturday night, and it was a lot of soft zone coverage.
Yeah.
To me, I went and rewatched it, and I was less discouraged by it simply because I kind of feel like it was preseason funkiness. Was that your takeaway as well?
Yeah. When you go back and rewatch with the eyes and understanding of, okay, what we saw up until that point is different than what we're seeing now. You could put it in perspective. But I mean, first play of the game, Kenneth Murray Jr., they sent him in there.
Yep.
He went and he got a hit, forced a quick throw. Even though it was still 2nd and 10, that's a good play. You know what I mean? So you did have those. I don't think he was as aggressive overall with that first group. Then you got to remember, no Jeffrey Simmons out there, no Harold Landry, no L'Jarius Sneed, no Chidobe Awuzie. Quandre Diggs would probably end up being a starter. He wasn't there. There's a lot that was missing. Of course, there was a lot that was missing on the other side too.
Right. On the back end, and I guess I could have come to this conclusion before the game, but that preseason game really solidified for me. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is your cornerback 4. I don't think there's any question. I think outside of the top 3, he's the guy. I am stoked to see him continue to improve because I think he's a starter one day. I think it's just a matter of time. And then after that, I think the talent really takes a dip. With Trey Avery, what we saw in that game was a lot of what we've seen throughout camp, which frankly, it's kind of, the offense when in doubt, pick on Trey Avery. We've seen that, and it's no slight to the guy, but, out there at Titans camp, a lot of Calvin Ridley's biggest plays have been against Trey Avery. We saw them kind of pick on him. The Niners did in that game. So I wasn't surprised at what we saw, but I just, he's not a guy you want out there on Sundays. And then with Gabe Jeudy-Lally, man, I think you saw some of the roughness. I think you saw a guy that was still kind of struggling to be comfortable in a scheme, especially in zone. He looked a little bit lost. I guess I'm not super surprised by his performance, but a little bit disappointed there.
I think you're right on with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. You guys are at the Senior Bowl. You saw it. So this isn't a surprise to you guys. And I love the way he's playing on the outside. You look at that deep pass. I forget who the receiver was, but, he was beat a little bit. He didn't panic. Very veteran move. And I was joking with him after the game about it. I was like, that's a vet move, man. You put your hand out there to feel where he is while you're looking for the ball. That's good stuff. And then you stayed in phase and position to make a play. And he actually fought it all the way through the tuck. The receiver, boom, he knocked it out. That's a good play. And those are the things that, you got to really like about a young corner like Jarvis Brownlee Jr., that not panicking. And Gabe Jeudy, I mean, it's going to be a roller coaster, and Trey Avery, he's getting a lot of work and he's probably going to find his way on the roster still. I do believe that, but I think I always say Landry, talking about Jarvis. I think Jarvis Brownlee he's going to be the guy.
Yeah. Looking at the inside linebackers, just kind of going position by position here, that room is complicated. And I was more impressed by the second team linebackers in that game in particular than I was the starters. I thought Otis Reese and Chance Campbell had big games. And between Otis Reese, Chance Campbell, we can't forget about Cedric Gray, who's coming back from the shoulder, hopefully soon. And then the 2 starters in Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons. I don't know. Maybe the coaching staff has their mind made up, and I wouldn't be shocked if they do. I don't think there's a huge difference between any of those 5 guys right now, and I think they all have at least one significant flaw. I'm just curious to see how it ends up shaking out because I think any of those guys could make a run at a starting or maybe the 3rd rotational role. Yeah,
and don't forget about James Williams. He's going to mess around and make the roster on a special team. Luke Gifford, special team. But James Williams, he's like the water boy to me. You know what I mean? All he wants to do is hit, so you do have him. But you're right, that Ole Miss connection, right? Campbell and Reese, those guys, they were making plays. Now, Cedric Gray, he told me that he'll be back this week, and he fully expects to play in the game on Saturday.
Good. So
we'll see. But, I mean, I hope he gets in the mix soon because I don't want him to fall behind too far. I feel like he's a guy that could at some point compete for a starting spot, and he has the athleticism and has the smarts to be able to play it next to Kenneth Murray Jr., who we're seeing is actually he's going to be the green dot guy. So,
Yeah, you mentioned James Williams, and you're right. I completely forgot about him. It was interesting to hear the coach's remarks on him after the game, talking about how I don't think James Williams knows just how good he can be yet.
Yeah.
We were talking to Nick Suss earlier today, you and I, and it sounded like I think he put it in a good a good way, insofar as he was all over the place in that game. At times, it looked like he didn't know why he was where he was. But he's still just kind of trying to figure out that role. The athleticism is absolutely there. The other rookie that we're keeping an eye on is Jalen Harrell, and that brings us to the edge position. What's your opinion on this edge group without Arden Key? Are you comfortable if they go into the season not adding somebody? I'm at the point where I'm not sure they can justify not trying to add somebody that is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And, it seems like I say it every year. You know what I mean? Sign Marcus Golden. Sign Marcus Golden. Well, the Steelers did that, and he retired, But
right.
Like, that was the move I thought they should have made, because I felt that he would give them what they want, that strong edge setter and a guy who still has some pass rush ability. What does Carl Lawson have left? I don't know. The Hassan Reddick situation is interesting. I wouldn't, trade for him, because you're giving up a good pick and you're signing him to a big deal, So there's got to be some help that they could add. There's got to be some help, but it's just who's out there. That's the main thing. His options. Matthew Judon, same situation. I'm not giving up a significant pick and signing him to a big contract.
Right. I just, I don't know. I think this defense is going to have to be really crafty, at least the first 6 weeks without Arden Key, using those middle linebackers, send in Kenneth Murray, send in Jamal Adams, getting guys from different positions than you're used to after the quarterback, because I don't think you can rely on the guys lining up on the edge to get there.
No, you can't rely on just the guys on the edge. And the way it's looking now, there's going to be one escape route for the quarterback, and I always liken rushing the quarterback to National Geographic, right? Where you have the lions hunting the gazelles, and you have the one set of lions, like they chase the gazelle to one area for the other set to pounce. But the only way they could pounce is when that gazelle's tracked, because typically the gazelle is more athletic than the lion to get away. So not to get too far into the weeds, but it's just the same. You got that outside pass rush coming. And he's not rushing too deep. He's rushing, enough to make him have to step up into the pocket. And you got Sweat and Simmons getting that interior pressure, right? So if it's collapsing like this, if this rush on this side isn't there, then he's just going to come this way and be able to find that lane and get going. So you're going to have to be creative. I would imagine Denard Wilson is going to work some stunts and some things like that, where he has, Sweat getting that interior pressure, and maybe even having Simmons loop, or even actually Simmons be the shoot guy and Sweat loop, you know what I mean? And he'll be that guy to get that pressure on the outside. But you're going to have to do some things, even, if you have Kenneth Murray blitz that gap and Simmons, come around. They're going to have to do something, long story short, because there's going to be a weak area for the pass rush.
I posed this question earlier today in the media room, but those two rookies we just mentioned, who are you higher on right now to potentially become like if I told you one of these guys ends up being a starter in the NFL, is it James Williams or is it Jalen Harrell?
I'm really fond of guys that just go bust, up. So
Williams then.
I'm gonna go with James Williams, but a case could be made for either one of them, that's for sure.
The case definitely to be made for Jalen Harrell there is that it's a less crowded room right now, right? He has the most opportunity to gain to become, more of that
just
NFL ready kind of player.
Path, right?
It's an easier path, because you even consider, going back to that point about how Denard may have to scheme some things up to kind of compensate for that opposite side of the edge rusher right there. Having a guy come back in Cedric Gray, who you talk about being that more seeing the field better, being the smarter guy to kind of play that zone coverage, and letting Kenneth Murray do what he does best, which is get after the quarterback and cover that ground. That also adds into another element of his game there, where you see him be able to kind of play off of Kenneth Murray. And so that's going to make that room even more interesting.
Yeah, this defense overall is very interesting, right? You know, we're talking about the competition at linebacker, the best of the rest at outside backer. Man, you look at safety, like
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Jackson, Mike Brown, Shy Carter on the back end of that.
So many
You know,
questions.
you got the veterans, you know, coming in, Adams and Diggs competing with Elijah Moat. Like, it's the only short thing in the secondary. I mean, safety wise, is Hooker. Like, who knows what's going to happen other than that?
It's so fascinating to me because we all talk about this from the outside looking in, and like you said, it's all questions, it's all uncertainty, and yet we get in there. All three of us will sit and listen to Denard Wilson talk. He's just got this air about him of like it's like he knows something we don't. Is the vibe that I get, and maybe he doesn't. Maybe this is all going to be like a kind of a train wreck to begin. But there's something about the way this coaching staff talks about their defensive situation, the way that they're operating out there when we are interacting with them, that makes me think we just maybe don't quite get it yet.
Yeah, there's something to what Kenneth Murray. I talked to him on the side and I asked him about Denard Wilson. And you know Kenneth Murray, you guys will learn how you always have the beat button ready for him. You know, and he looked me right in the face and he said, "Man, I'll run through a mother effing wall for him." And he was like, "There's something to the way that dude is able to motivate us." I don't know what it is, but like this is a dude that has known him for a few months. You know what I mean? And
Right.
is speaking with that type of conviction about him. You know, and it's not like it's in a press conference where there's a bunch of show. I didn't have the video up. You know what I mean? Like this is a conversation. He meant that. You know what I mean? So that just in itself, we'll see what happens. But when you have guys speaking like that of someone else, I think that holds a lot of weight.
Well, and I think the reassuring thing there is even if things are rocky, I don't think there's no part of me that wonders if there's going to be a loss of conviction, you know, folks not being on the same page defensively, starting to point the finger.
Yeah.
I think he runs a tight ship in that regard.
Yeah. He got that black Air Force One's energy, man.
Right. That's right. Well, looking forward to the next couple of days. You know, I have people ask me, what is it about joint practices that is so beneficial? Because everybody from media to coaches to players, everyone talks about how you love joint practices. They're the best of training camp.
Yeah.
And for us, I think in the media, it allows us to deconstruct the chicken or egg narrative where we're watching Titans on Titans for weeks on end. And we have to try to make a determination whether or not an impressive play is because one side of the ball is good or if the other side of the ball is bad. And like the ultimate example of that was last year when all of us were talking to Arden Key coming off the field every day of August. How many sacks today, Arden? No, it was an 8-sack day. Wow, this defensive front's going to be awesome. Turns out the offensive line just blows. They stink. The offensive front or the defensive front is just kind of average. There's a number of elements like that to this team where we've seen, for example, T'Vondre Sweat just crushing guys in one-on-ones. Well, how much of that is T'Vondre Sweat is just fantastic, and how much of it is some of these offensive linemen maybe are questionable. We see the position battle between the wide receivers and the cornerbacks. I just am most excited to see that kind of deconstructed. And when they go up against some other opponents, we get to see, okay, no, this really is the way that we think it is, or maybe we need to reevaluate. So that being said, what is the position group, or maybe a couple of them, that you're most curious to see up against some new talent?
Hey, I can't front. It's the trenches, man. Like, I want to see Sweat against those interior guys in Seattle, right? And then look, his running mate, Byron Murphy. I want to see him against Cush. I want to see him against Skoronski and see what he does. See what Dylan Radins is able to do against those guys. And it's not just them. I mean, there's plenty of options, you know. And like Bill Callahan said today, you get to see a lot of different styles, and then it's something that you're not used to seeing every day. So it's going to be refreshing even for those players to be going against them like that.
Yeah, that interior in Seattle, nothing to sniff at. Laken Tomlinson, Connor Williams, Anthony Bradford, those guys are going to give them some run. I found it interesting talking to Bill Callahan today. He was kind of mentioning along the lines of the J.C. Latham conversation, somebody who's young like that, who doesn't have the experience. It's a big deal for him to be able to go up against guys on the edge that he doesn't know what their strengths are. He doesn't know what they're likely to hit him with. Just that uncertainty of whether or not they're going to try to take it wide or go speed to power or try to stunt and take an inside lane. Having to figure that out on the fly and use that athleticism that he has to adjust on the fly. I think that's going to be one really interesting for us to watch to see how he handles it. But two,
those exposures are great for a guy like Latham. They're great for him. So I'm absolutely looking forward to that, man.
I think the box office thing when it comes to what from the three of us is going to do the best on social media, man, it's going to be it's the one-on-ones. Those wide receiver DB battles are going to be awesome, and I'm hoping we've got as many healthy guys in there as possible, because on the Seattle side, DK and Tyler Lockett and JSN, those three are going to give. We'll see if L'Jarius Sneed gets any run this week. Cheeto is still injured, but you'll see Roger McCreary out there. You'll see Charles Jr. out there. Those are going to be box office, man. I'm looking forward to that.
I totally forgot about JSN.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about. Yeah, see, that's all the more, And then you look on the flip side, man. Devin Witherspoon. You talk about dog. I'm looking forward to it, man. It's gonna be lots of fun. Let's see how many balls Mason Kinsey spins this week, man.
I'm gonna guess it's not as many. I'm gonna go out on.
I don't know, man. Mason, he has a way of shining in those one-on-one. Kyle Phillips too, man.
That's right. It's there's also a handful of guys that are, you mentioned JSN was many Titans fans' favorite. Like they were wanting him to be the pick in Tennessee. So it's going to be interesting to see how he looks in comparison to the team. I forgot about Jerome Baker, who many people wanted to, bring in here and be a linebacker option, and he's over there now. Everybody's going to. I forgot about Tariq Woolen as well. He's a fantastic young corner.
Oh yeah, long, strong, and super fast, man. Yeah, we're in for a treat.
We're in for a treat. JT, you got anything? I think I'm all out of questions here. I think we're ready to wrap up unless you got a question.
I was just going to say one of the more maybe not flashy matchups, but those running backs that Seattle has between Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, those guys going up against the linebackers this week, even in places that we can't film or whatnot. That's going to be a really nice treat to watch as well. I think that's going to give us more clarity, especially with the ones and Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons and whoever else might get into that rotation there with the ones against those running backs. Because Seattle does like to dump off to their running backs and give design looks to those guys in the passing game as well. So it'll be interesting how much they can look at that. I think we can go back to like you guys said, the two Texas teammates are going to be fun to watch all week. Maybe we'll get a Senior Bowl matchup or a revenge match between the rookie Christian Haynes for Seattle and T'Vondre Sweat. That could be fun again to see if we can see them line up again. And 7 months later, let's see where they stack up. That could be a fun treat. And then, like you said, Byron Murphy going up against those guys in the interior, Lloyd Cushenberry, Peter Skronsky, those guys. I think the last one, though, is how much of a factor does Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs play into this week? Whether it is just kind of giving their teammates pointers, actually getting into the mix there with the guys and kind of stirring up the pot a little bit. I know we talked about
fights this week. How many fights?
we were talking kind of giving an over under about, what are we going to see from those guys and will they be leading the charge? I think that those are two guys to look for if you're looking for fireworks this week and trying to get their team like ramped up and energized. I'm looking for the two former Seattle Seahawks to get it going for the Titans.
Yeah, I agree, man. And Quandre, that's a fiery little dude, man.
Yeah.
Like you almost when you're that size and playing that position, you have to be. Right. But yeah, I'm looking forward to they try to play it cool, I'm looking forward to it. I have a lot of friends. Yeah, okay. You know what happens when you get between the lines. You don't have any friends. So, throw that out the window. I can't wait to see that. And obviously, Jeffrey Simmons. Simmons is going to get into the mix with somebody. You can't have joint practices without him doing it.
That's right.
So I put the line at 1.5, and Easton called me crazy.
Maybe I'm
calling myself crazy as well.
Yeah, because they've been fighting each other. So.
Yeah, that's right.
I think the over under's got to go up a little bit.
Yeah, I say 2.5, and I'll take the over still.
The only way we're not getting a lot of fights is, I don't know if y'all saw up in New England, they're having joint practices this week, and the head coach up there instituted a rule that any starters that get into a fight are going to have to play the entire preseason game, and any backups that get into a fight aren't allowed to play in the preseason game.
Oh, wow.
That's a good rule. I mean, that's going to keep guys from fighting. I guarantee you that.
Okay, but, Gerard Mayo, that's wise. I like that.
It is wise. I think that will keep guys from fighting, but unless that's something that's instituted here, I think we'll see a handful of fights. But it's all in the good nature of a joint practice. I think we're good here. TD, we appreciate just talking. It's kind of turned into just a naming guys session here at the end, which is
all
fun
right.
this time of year.
It's fun.
A couple of things before we go. We'll be back on Thursday. If folks haven't seen, we've got another giveaway. We've got a club seat with your name on it. If you would like to join JT and I watching the Thursday night, the second football game of the preseason for the Titans this Saturday night against the Seahawks, all you got to do is submit a picture proving that you have subscribed to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube, and then you follow us at Hot Read Pod on either TikTok or on Instagram. Follow us on socials, follow us on YouTube, and you could join us in the club section for free this Saturday night. The drawing will be on Thursday, our live show at 4 p.m. So you have until then to get your submissions in. Just DM us or email us, and we will throw you in that drawing. Until then, TD, thank you for your time. We appreciate you. We'll see you out there tomorrow. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. It's been the Hot Read Podcast.